Skill 3, Activity 1, and the objective is to understand that mixed numbers and improper fractions both exist at the same time. The quantity is the same, but the structure is different. And use knowledge of one whole and counted by fractional parts to understand how to do non-process procedure conversions, okay? So we've up till this point, the lessons you've done before, your students have been exposed to what an improper fraction is or even a mixed number through counting, right? They've learned that they can count past one when your numerator is one bigger than your denominator. You now have more than one. So now we're going to talk about, we planted a lot of seeds. Now we're looking at formally teaching about what improper fractions and mixed numbers are, okay? And a lot of times when we think about improper fractions and mixed numbers, our focus tends to be on sort of just the conversions, right? Not as much the understanding, but you multiply the whole number times the denominator and add the numerator, or you divide and that's how you do it. So we're going to talk about a real fundamental way so they actually understand what is actually going on, okay? So this is where you're gonna actually say the term improper fraction, okay? And what you're gonna say is, an improper fraction, it's improper because the numerator is larger than the denominator, okay? And so that's like, it's improper. It's just not how we're used to seeing fractions. It's still a fraction, but it's just an unusual, not unusual, a different way of writing it, because most kids, they're used to, 3/4 or half or so on. So let's take a look at right here, okay? We have 1/3, 2/3, 3/3, 4/3, 5/3, okay? We have 5/3. Now remember too, these have the third on it, so we don't have to do any calculating, we already know, so we have 5/3. And what we tend to say is when we look at improper fractions, we look at it as like the pieces are separated, the pieces are individual, okay? And then what you can say is, all right, when there's a mixed number, the pieces are put together. So if we were to go ahead, and I like to use circle models with this better because it's just much easier to do. So now we're gonna say, all right, let's take a look. Now, when we look at a mixed number, it means we're gonna write it as a whole with a fraction. And it's blatantly obvious now that that fraction is put together, that we know that we have 3/3, right? But by this point, they know that 3/3 is the same as 1, okay? So we know that we have one whole, and then we have 2/3 right there, okay? And again, you can say, okay, break it. And if you break it, it's almost like we have our improper fraction now. And then when we put it back together, we have our mixed number. So that's what we're looking to do here, okay? And that's just with these paper models. We'll do one more with the paper models. Then we'll bring in some other models that you may or may not have. And we'll see how that goes, okay? So again, we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna have fourths. And I'm gonna have these fourths broken into pieces like this. And we're going to say, all right, these pieces are broken apart. And so what we're going to do is we're going to figure out what our improper fraction is, right? Because these are standalone pieces. So we have 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, 5/4. We have 6/4, right? Pieces separated. Now, mixed number, put the pieces together. We're going to go ahead and put the pieces together. And you can clearly see, again, even if you're going to break it down to the fundamentals, we have 4/4 there, and they know that 4/4 is the same as a 1 whole, so we're going to write 1 whole right there, and then we have 2/4 right there. And again, we're not worried about teaching them the division part yet or multiply 1 by 4. We want them to understand, okay, when you're doing it like this, you can go ahead and you can group it, you can break it, and then you can group it together like that, okay? All right, and again, you can always go ahead and you can bring out the fraction bars too if you have these models too. And you can go ahead and say, okay, ready? We have, these are all broken apart. And what do we have here? We have, let's take a look. Our whole's just there to measure it, but we have 1/3, 2/3, 3/3, 4/3. And it's good too because they're able to actually see this, right? And then say, okay, we're gonna go ahead and put it together now. And when we put it together, take a look. We have a whole there. We can actually put this on top right here. So we have our 1 whole, and then we have our 1/3, okay? 1 whole and 1/3. And then we can take it off and say, remember, 3/3 is a whole, so we have 1 whole and 1/3. And then we can go ahead and we can break it, and we're back to our mixed number. Our improper fraction. All right, also too, if you have models that look like this, this is a really, really, really useful thing that you can do. And what these are, if you just tape these together, you can go ahead and make it like this, okay? So you can talk about it like, okay, I have 4/4, I have a whole. I can go ahead and fold it like this, and I still have a whole. So you can go ahead and say, okay, over here I have 6/4 or 6 1/4. And again, we can go ahead and count them. We can go ahead and say, oh, look, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, 5/4. I have 6/4 right here. And go ahead and lay it down and go ahead and put your 6/4. And then say, but you know, improper fractions, no one ever call a pizza place and say, you know, can I order 6/4 of a pizza, right? That's why we try, mixed numbers is how we're more commonly used. So then you say, all right, when we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna break it, put the pieces together, we know that we have 4/4, and then we would have 2/4, and we know that 4/4 is one whole, and then that would be 2/4 right there, okay? Let's do one more. All right, and again, right here, we have 6/6 right here. I'm telling you that's 6/6, 7/6, and we have 8/6, right? We have 8/6. Now you need to ask your kids too, okay, let's predict. When I open it, how many 6 do we need to have one hole, right? So let's try to predict now, before we break it, how many holes are we gonna have? And so it's like, well, if they know that 6/6 is a hole, they know we're gonna have a hole, then we're gonna have 2 past 1/6, right? So again, we can go ahead and we can open it like this, and we have our 6/6 right here, and then we have our 2/6. So our mixed number would be 1 and 2/6. And that's doing it with the model. You can also do things like this. You could go ahead and do like, okay, 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, right? And say, okay, how many fourths do we have? We have 6/4, and say, okay, what I want you to do is group the holes. So here we go. We've grouped it because we know that 4/4 is a whole. So that's our whole right there. And then our leftover parts is our 2/4. So 1 and 2/4. And again, if you want to put it back into improper fraction, just erase the groupings and it goes back into its original form of 1/4. Okay, so you did a lot of foundational building with counting by fractional parts, kids immediately knowing that 4/4 and so on. So again, this is like a natural way. We want kids to understand how to do this. You can do it through grouping, and then a lot of the formative assessments has to do with understanding mixed numbers and improper fractions exist at the same time, even converting them, but none of it with the multiplication and the division that we're used to. We're just basically using through counting or adding, understanding what one whole is in a very natural way.